Hello and welcome to another episode of It Came From the Page. And today we are going into week 2 of GarbAugust and all of the books that I read for that week. Not as many DNFs this week, and I also overdid it and read more books than I should have. There's a lot of books we're going to talk about. I read too many books. Can you read too many books? Yes. Yes, you can, and I did, but it's fine. We'll get into it. Starting off, I mentioned this briefly last episode. last video. Last episode of It Came From the Page. I did try to go to get one of the Horus Heresy books done, which is Deliverance Lost, which I was reading physically. It was just kind of like a palate cleanser. It's still considered trash for the wider literary universe, but I like these books a lot. I've read a lot of them this year. This one was really good, and I was starting to get worried because everyone said that this was bad, but I liked it, and I thought it was pretty good writing, and I thought the characters were really well done and really interesting, and there was a unique aspects to it, because these are a bunch of soldiers who are brought into this giant intergalactic war after being slaves on a mining planet and then overthrowing their government, and then this giant multi-system conglomerate of humans that are horrible dictatorships that own the universe come in and then turns those revolutionaries into soldiers, and they're the stealthy soldiers. It's kind of their thing. And I was I thought this really interesting. The main character of this book, who is Corvus Corax, who's basically a demigod in this universe, is really interesting and seems the most human out of all the Primarchs. So I was kind of starting to get worried. I'm do I recognize what a bad Warhammer book is like? The answer is yes. We'll get to it. Anyways, after that, I did a very short book, which was Splatterosaurus Rex. So Splatter-Saurus Rex is the sequel to Splatter-Saurus, which is the Judith Sonnet novel, and I read that a few months ago when I was on vacation. I loved it. It was so cheesy and campy. Now, that one does have a little bit of... there are a few... if you're a person who gets really up in the air about editing stuff, that book has some editing errors here and there, and that's mainly because Judith Sonnet, in the afterword, was I had to completely recover this from my hard drive. So yeah, it clearly, it's not perfect in that regard, but as far as just reading it and having super fun and is lots of great carnage, it delivers. And Splatterosaurus Rex is written by Brian G. Barry, and it takes right after the first book in the series, and it is wild and silly and goofy and raunchy. What I like about Brian G. Barry, I've read one of his other books, Ogre, which is again really fun. He is a raunchy, kind of trashy writer, but he has just enough humanity in his characters to make you care a little bit. So people get horror, some of the violence in this is wild and over the top and cray, but he does do just that little bit of making the world feel a little bit more real than a lot of people who write crazy out there books like this do. You actually kind of felt the characters were characters, and it's oh, whoa, this crazy thing happened. How are they reacting? Also, there's a lot of very funny movie references in this. There is a very clear Mulder and Scully knockoff, which is also ends up being a Critters reference. And then they bone, and it's wild. But yeah, it's a Brian G. Barry book. People speak getting it on. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. Very silly, very campy. If you like the first book, I would definitely recommend this. Obviously, go in knowing that this is legit just a trashy sci-fi movie of the week turned into book form. And if you want that, it's GarbAugust, why wouldn't you? This is something that you would probably enjoy. Next up, I got back onto the video game tie-in train just because I was I gotta see this through and try a little bit more of these video game tie-ins because I gave up real quickly on them for good reason. But this one is a Warcraft book, which is written by the same person who wrote the Diablo book that I liked and read last week. And it's kind of a very like this writer clearly has a similar style, and it works better in the Diablo universe than it does here. This is like they've got to free a dragon from these orcs and release the orcs, but there's other evil dragons who are trying to make sure that they can steal the eggs of the dragons and do some dragon shit. So it's like a very like D&D questy book, which I enjoy. I don't have anything wrong with it. But it's like there's like a wizard named Ronan, and like there is like the elven ranger, and there's like a swarthy dwarf who like rides griffins and stuff. Like it's very stereotypical in that regards, but it is fun enough. It has enough to the plot that I was enjoying it and had a good time reading it, but it was like not gonna blow your mind in any stretch of the imagination. It was just one of those like, oh, that's like pretty run-of-the-mill fantasy, but in a way that I enjoyed. Like I did enjoy it, but it does have like it's I gotta give this book credit because it's well written enough that it uses some tropes that I hate and I still end up enjoying it. Like for example, one of the evil dragons who gets involved in politics. Why dragons get involved in politics? But anyways, dragon politics. They take on human forms, and I hate that. I hate when dragons take on human forms. Always dumb. I don't care. If you gotta have a dragon interrupting your politics, I want to look at like the political square of this universe. Like I want to see the dragon as a dragon in the Senate, being like, "Rah! I think we should have more gold and eat more peasants." And they'd be like, "Okay, cool. Thank you, Senator Dragon from Florida." Like, okay, cool. So I hate when like fantasy creatures have like a disguise as a human so that they can do human-y weird stuff. But it's like, man, whatever. But there are other cool dragons that have a lot of cool like ability. There's like these like 5 elemental dragons that like they get together and as dragons doing shit. It's fun. It's like again, it's like very run of the mill fantasy book. But I found out I do actually enjoy that. I think I don't like epic fantasy, but for me, I enjoy fantasy that's a little bit lower key, like a more focusing on character interactions and like a party system kind of thing rather than saving the world, because I find a lot of epic fantasy and a lot of YA fantasy kind of just ends up being like warmongering at its core, which is something I don't enjoy as much. But if it's like focused on like, oh, war's bad, no, there's no such thing as a good war. I don't know why the guy from Pet Sematary is like, here's my opinion on fantasy. Don't go down that road. Now come down and let's do a D&D game. He just turned it into Forrest Gump. Next up, I did read a novelization. I read 2 novelizations. These were both super quick. I listened to these from Slash Tracks, which is a YouTube channel where they take these old movie novelizations and they make audiobooks out of them. I had some running around to do a day, and I got 2 of these done in one day because they were super quick. So the first up, I did Halloween 3 Seasons of the Witch. Now, I love Halloween 3 Seasons of the Witch, and this is like a pretty damn good adaptation of that story. There are a few little in-jokes here and there that I was like, oh, that's fun. And this is, it's written by Jack Martin, who's actually Dennis Etchison. So, like, Dennis Etchison actually writes the shit out of this book. So there's, like, some really good atmosphere and some cool, like, if you're looking for something to read around Halloween and you want to get some, like, Halloween-y atmosphere, like, this is not, this would not be a bad choice. Now, of course, you have to like the movie Halloween 3. So I like Halloween 3. Halloween 3 is an unhinged movie in a lot of respects. And the main man is not extremely likable. So in the movie, you have he's played by Tom Atkins. And Tom Atkins is like charming even when he's playing a scuzzball. So like the movie kind of gets by on Tom Atkins, whereas like the book doesn't have that guy as doing the performance. It's just on the written page, and that character seems absolutely unhinged. If you don't know the plot of this, it's evil mask company is trying to murder children. That's the main plot, and there's like this like alcoholic doctor who's like for real alcoholic doctor who gets involved in this, and like the book has these little extra details about like him being like, everyone's a mindless automaton, and I'm like, oh, that's like it adds to the thematic what this movie is trying to say. So like this is not great. It's fun, it's silly, and I had a great time with it. So like if you like Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, you will like this. It's like a good adaptation of the movie and adds in little extra details and has some really great instances of atmosphere. After that, I listened to the audiobook for Halloween 4. Now, Halloween 4 was, along with Halloween 3, both of those were like the very first horror movies I ever saw. So I saw Halloween 3, just the tail end of it, and like when it gets really wild, but I didn't see the full thing. My full first horror movie of all time was Halloween 4. I had never read the novelization. I think that there are some good things about the novelization. Like, there is some good character writing there, and there is some interesting added details, and it kind of expands on certain fun elements of that original film. But there's also some fairly big downsides to the movie, to the novelization. And that is, like, there's a few instances of, like, there's some slurs. There was no slurs in the movie. So that's, like, you get some, like, homophobia just kind of ramples in. And it just sprinkled in like, a random spot. You're like, that was unnecessary. Wasn't in the movie. Why did you add it here? Like, I know it's just a character's, like, thinking, but it's still ugh. And there's like a use of an R word as well, and again, not in the movie. So there's like offensive bits added to this that, like, I don't know why you would, like, because there wasn't in the movie. They didn't have these like offensive-y bits, so it's like it kind of like brings down the overall enjoyment of the book when you're kind of like, ugh, why did you add that in? You didn't need to add that in. It doesn't really serve the main story in any way, and just kind of like ruins what is otherwise a pretty great, fun adaptation of a campy, cheesy like horror film. So it's just it was unfortunate in that way. It doesn't age well, and this audiobook was actually based off of the revised edition and the ultimate authorized revised edition, blah blah blah. So I'm like, why wouldn't you go in and change those bits? But anyways, whatevs. Next up, I did read a little book called, I kind of was trying to look for a change of pace, and I picked this one up. I found this in a little free library not too long ago, and this is the Ultimate RPG Characters Backstory Guide. I was kind of just looking for something fun and chill to read and enjoy, and this was a lot of fun. Now, this is kind of meant to be kind of like interactive. So, like, there's a lot of, like, prompts for you to, like, write down and answer questions. And it kind of helps you build a character in D&D. Now, some of the tips and tricks in this, some of them are, like, kind of steps on the toes of a DM. So, like, I wouldn't, like, if you've never played an RPG backstory character guide, some of the things that are more character specific here, like, and more backstory and more plot specific, maybe talk to your DM before doing them. But for the most part, when you're just kind of trying to flesh out and make a more interesting character in D&D, there's a lot of good prompts here. There's a lot of good added detail you could do. I would even say this would be a book that might be useful for somebody who's, like, trying writing for the first time, and they're trying to make characters that are a little bit more than just your basic cookie cutter characters. And it kind of like gives you some tips and tricks to kind of flesh out your character ideas. And also there is some like just funny writing and silly writing here as well, like some cool little scenarios for you to like play out with your character that were like very entertaining and enjoyable. So I would definitely recommend this, and I had a great time reading it. But there's not a whole lot to it other than, you're participating in this, right? Like, so it's like, it has like little things of like, it's trying to like expand what universe you're in or the town you're in. And it's like, who makes the world's greatest wines? Where do they grow their crops? So the future remarkable is the soil special, and like little details like that to kind of just flesh out a story that you're telling. And even if it's just adding little things in the background to understand that if a character, if somebody asks you about something in more detail, you can actually answer it and don't have to like make it up on the fly. So yeah, I thought that was really cool and exciting and just a little nice thing. Next up, I cannot believe this, but this was a 5-star book. This book is one of my favorite reads of the year. It was great, and it's also a video game tie-in. Listen, this is probably going to be the only 5-star of all of GarbAugust. There's no way anything else I have planned is going to get 5 stars. Maybe Twilight. We'll see. I'll see how it holds up on the reread. But this is Lord of the Clans by Christy Golden, and it is a Warcraft novel. again, and it's great. You do not have to. You do not. It's technically the second. It's called like Warcraft #2, like on Goodreads and stuff like that. But you absolutely do not need to read Day of the Dragon. There's nothing important about that book to get into this book. This is just a really interesting character study that fleshes out the orcs and tries to like add some backstory to them and tries to make like an interesting character study and character piece. It's basically like there is an orc who is captured by this like horrible dude who is in charge of all of the internment camps for the orc kind. Basically, there was like a human orc war. Humans won, and they put all these orcs into internment camps and treat them terribly. And there is a guy who finds a baby orc, and he's like, I'm going to raise this orc. He's going to fight in the gladiatorial arena for me, get me all this money, and then eventually I'm going to use him to fake free all these orcs, and then I'm going to use this army of orcs that is under my control to take over the rest of the human empire. So not only is he terrible to the orcs, he's a shitty person to the humans as well. And it really adds in a lot of detail and complexity about this world that like you don't necessarily get in most storytelling of this ilk. A lot of times fantasy is like a they're bad, get them bad guys, bam bam bam, we the heroes. Whereas this is like a, well, here's what it would be like in a real world. Like here's what the aftermath of a giant conflict would be like if we kind of extrapolated and tried to like look into this and try to add some depth to this. And like the main character, the main orc, is this guy named Thrall. He is super interesting as a character, and this book has a lot of really complex themes and complex ideas about being raised in like abusive homes and like what it means to like overcome that, and in a way that I thought was like really adult and really impactful and really just kind of interesting and exciting. And there is a lot of more like, damn, that's a dark element to this, and it felt like it was realistic. So there's a lot more complexity to this book than I've encountered in any other video game tie-in, even remotely. And I don't think you need to read or play any of the other Warcraft material to get into this. Like, I think you could just pick this up and understand it as it is, and it's well worth it. I listened to this as an audiobook, and I thought it was fantastic. Christy Golden, I might have to read more of her works. I mean, she's only done other Warcraft books, so I don't know if I want to do that. But I will have to look to see if she's written anything else, because, yeah, this was just a great book with really good and in-depth characters, with a lot of really interesting themes. And, yeah, it was just a very impactful book, and I was not expecting that from a book based off of a video game. So, Warcraft Lord of the Clans, the best video game adaptation ever, at least in my experience so far. Next up, I was in the orc experience. I was like, orcs is peoples. Orcs is the best there is. Orcs can do it all. So I read the second book in the Claws and Cubicle series, which the first book is Love, Laugh, Lich. And this is The Orc from The Office, a smutty romance set in a very funny, like, fictional world where there's, like, the plot of this book, like, the world that it's in, it's like an office space. And this office building is full of, like, normally stereotypically evil fantasy creatures, and also like humans who are just like normal humans doing their day-to-day. And essentially this is a world where the evil empire has won, and now it's basically become like just a normal life for everyone. So like, you know, the head of the company is this lich who's just like, yes, I need my coffee with human tears, yes, thank you. And then there's like, you know, it's like, I need you for sex rituals. And then that's when the saucy bits happen in the first book. But the orc from The Office is just this like really kind of cute story about this orc who works in IT, and like this lady who is in HR, and she's like trying to like get this like stuck drawer. He is like trying to help her with this like drawer that's like stuck of this filing cabinet, and she like accidentally like bashes his nose when it like gives, and apparently the way that sometimes how orcs, you know, form bonds is if you blood an orc, then you could get the blood fever where you both fall madly in love with each other. So it's like that at first, but then they're like, they go to like the monster resources and they're like, look, it's just this is a thing that happens. Just stay away from each other. Keep in contact. You can keep in contact with each other, but just stay and like this just happens. This is the thing that's like happens with orcs. Don't worry about it. And they're both like, okay, cool, because like they're both like super into each other, and it's them starting to get a relationship and get a romantic entanglement without the blood fever, right? So it's like they find there's like remedies to like stop the blood fever from like affecting them so much, and they just kind of get to know each other, and it's really kind of like a meet cutie thing. And the smut is damn smutty, and it's just very funny. So I really like this series. It's like basically like office comedy in a fantasy universe, and it's just very funny and well written and enjoyable. So that is The Orc from The Office. Next up, I did dabble into another Warhammer book. This is a Horus Heresy number 35, The Eye of Terra. This is a short story collection. Some are good, some are bad. Some are good. There are some that like are kind of and none of it is really super important to the overall series that this is a part of. But the good stories are actually really good, so it was like, it kind of evens out in the end, where you're like, well, this isn't technically important, but there's a lot of cool little character stories here and character bits, and I enjoyed it overall. Again, it's hard to get into that if you're not into the series, but yeah, there's some good stuff in there. And then the final thing I read, which is to show you that I do in fact know what bad writing in Warhammer looks like. This is one of the video game tie-ins for Warhammer 40,000. There is a video game called Dawn of War. It's like a real-time strategy game where you like build bases and you like have like wars and stuff like that. Fight the Orcs and the Eldar and the Chaos and other peoples and all the stuff. Blah, 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 blah. But there is a novelization of that video game. And look, I liked this quite a bit, but this is not well written. There is a lot of like, oh, that dialogue was not good, and like there's a lot of like fumbles and like baffling character choices here. But I was also kind of fun and adventurous and silly, fun shooties. This is like almost a book that might even be a good starting point for like Warhammer, because it has like all these different factions and you get like a little snippets of them, and like you get a little bit of Imperial Guard, you get an Inquisitor show up, and if you like either of them, you can follow books with them. If you, God forbid, like the Space Marines, you can go follow their fascist adventures somewhere. And if you like the Eldar, because you're really full of yourself, you can like follow the Eldar from this. And if you're cool and grad and you like the Orcs, you can follow orky stuff off of this. So it is just a lot of fun in that regard. And also Chaos is there, because of course there's a Chaos. Chaos is there too. If you like Chaos, you can follow them as well. So there's like all these like little factions here and there, and like it's very broad in terms of like what these characters are in the universe. So it's almost a good starting off point to kind of like read this and go like, oh, I like this bit. Oh, I like this bit. Oh, I like this character. I'd be interested to like follow what this type of universe is for them. There are some like wild scenes in this. There's also some like disappointing scenes in this where they set up like a character being badass and then they're killed like way too quickly. You're like, okay. And this is like a book that I still had a lot of fun with, because it is literally just like fun action bits, but like the character rating is pretty bad. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it might be a good starting off point, but it might also be the worst starting off point imaginable, because it's like, it's not good, but I liked it. Anyways, this book is what I expected from like all video game adaptations, to be like kind of like fun but trite and like not that like well done or well written, but I liked it still, and I'm also finding that most video game novels are not that, so it is exactly what I thought it would be, which is just fun shooty funny action bits with some great orc bits. The orc scenes in this are by far the best that are written. Like part of the book, not the best orc bits that are written. There's much better orc books, but like the orcs in this are really well fleshed out in a way that just like makes it super fun to read about them. I did go back and like was interested to watch the cutscenes from the original game to just kind of be like, this is like, was this terrible dialogue from the game? And like some of it was, but other parts were like, oh, this dude, like CS guy, it was all him. He did it all himself, and I was like, more power to you, dude. I just don't know how you'd get. I don't know how you can get through writing that sentence down and not go, that was not good. I should never written that. Anyways, as you can see, this is a big omnibus, and there are 2 other books in this series. There's actually 3 other books because there's a novelization of the second game as well. That's by a different writer. I don't know as much about that one, but I am going to continue reading these because they're bad, but they're fun. So they're like perfect GarbAugust material. But so that was my week 2. Don't expect week 3 to be anywhere like this because there's too many books. There are too many books. It was going to be a more relaxed week 3. Because I'm starting out with Adventures from Babysitting. That's what I'm doing. Adventures of Babysitting? Adventures in Babysitting. It's really small. It's like a little point novel. This will not take me long to read, but I'm going to do that today. So what did you guys read? Hope you guys had a good day. Bye-bye. What's this? Bye-bye. Is this my new thing? Bye-bye. I'm a snake.